He was screaming from inside a hole in the ground, raw-throated and soaked in blood and sweat. "Rex! Go! Run!" That's an order. But the dog just sat there in silence, unmoving, eyes locked onto his handler like it was the only thing in the world that still made sense. And in that moment, Sergeant Ferdinand wasn't yelling like a soldier anymore. He was begging like a man who knew he was going to die. "Please, boy, just go. Just leave me. I can't watch you die too." And still the dog stayed, refusing to leave, refusing to move, just watching him as the ground creaked and the ceiling above them groaned like it was holding its last breath. That slab of concrete had been hanging above Ferdinand's broken body for hours now, barely held up by twisted rebar and luck, and he knew one shift, one wrong sound, one gust of wind could bring it all down. But all that time, Rex didn't run. He didn't even flinch. Just stayed. Not because he was trained to. Not because of loyalty. The truth of why he stayed wouldn't come until much later, when the rescue team finally dug them out and someone reached for Rex's harness to pull him free. That was the moment the truth hit like a punch to the throat. But let me take you back to where it all started. Grab your coffee and stay with me, because what happened next broke every single person in that room. It was supposed to be a standard search mission. After an explosion tore through an old apartment complex on the outskirts of San Angelo, Texas, their unit was sent in to locate survivors. Ferdinand and Rex were always the first in. Fastest K-9 team in the battalion. 3 years together, side by side, dozens of missions, dozens of calls, dozens of times where the dog had saved his life without a word. Rex was the kind of dog who didn't wait for instructions. He understood everything before the sentence finished. That day, they were moving through a collapsed third floor, concrete chunks and twisted door frames like jagged bones sticking out of the walls. Rex was ahead of him, focused, nose low, tail stiff with alert. He gave the signal, a short glance, the tiniest shift in weight. They had someone. A survivor. "Hi, my amazing friends and family. Welcome back to Vigilant Heart Tales." Before we jump deep into today's story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing all your names and countries. And don't forget to check out the other stories on the channel. Tomorrow I've got another crazy one coming that I know you'll enjoy. Alright, let's get into it. Ferdinand followed him toward a crumbled stairwell. That's when the floor fell. 1 second he was stepping forward, the next, he was falling. Concrete and dust swallowed him whole. He couldn't feel anything below his ribs. Pain was the only thing alive in his body. His right leg was twisted under something huge. Cold, sharp metal and heavy concrete pressing into his hips like a vice. He couldn't sit up. Could barely breathe. His radio was busted. His rifle was gone. Everything above him creaked and groaned like it was warning him, "Don't move or you die." He blinked through the grit, heart pounding so loud he thought he'd gone deaf. Then he saw him, Rex, sitting 10 feet away in the dust and debris, just watching. His ears were forward, his eyes alert. His vest was intact. No blood, no limp, just sitting. Ferdinand felt a wave of relief so strong it almost made him cry. "Rex, thank God. Come here, boy." The dog didn't move. "Rex, I said come." Still nothing. "Rex," he said more softly now, voice cracking. "You have to go. There's a way out. Behind you. I can see it. There's a hole in the wall, sunlight coming through. You can make it. I'm not gonna make it. But you can." His voice shook. "Egress. That's an order." The dog didn't budge. Ferdinand's relief turned into panic. "Rex, please. I don't want to die knowing you'll get crushed with me." The ceiling shifted slightly. Dust rained down. The metal above him groaned, and the slab hanging just inches over his head swayed. He closed his eyes, trying to calm his breathing. He looked back at Rex. The dog still sat there. Steady. Calm. Too calm. "Why won't you move?" Ferdinand whispered. "Why won't you just go?" He was starting to shake now, panic creeping in like ice water. "Are you trying to die with me? Is that it?" His hands clawed the ground. He found a small stone and threw it. It hit Rex's snout. The dog flinched, ears pinned back, but didn't run. "Bad dog!" Ferdinand screamed. "Bad! I told you to leave." Another rock. A handful of gravel. Rex looked away, lowered his head slightly, but didn't budge. Didn't bark. Didn't growl. Just sat. The silence was unbearable. Ferdinand broke. His chest heaved with sobs, fists clenched against his own useless legs. He didn't want to die angry, but he couldn't help it. "I trained you better than this," he choked out. "Why are you doing this to me, Rex? Why?" He reached out, hand trembling, touched the edge of the vest. Rex leaned forward slowly and pressed his head down into Ferdinand's shoulder. No sound, no movement, just contact. And Ferdinand just broke apart right there. In the dark, in the silence, in the dust and death. He gripped the dog's harness and buried his face into his fur, weeping like a child. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry I yelled. I just want you to live." Time crawled by in that hole. Minutes, maybe hours. He told Rex everything. About the first day they met. About the times he'd thought about quitting. About the night his wife left and how Rex had been the only reason he didn't swallow a bullet. He told stories. Apologized again. Promised he'd do better if they ever got out. He knew they wouldn't. Eventually his voice faded. The pain was worse now. He was cold. So cold. "I love you, boy," he murmured. "You're a good dog. My best friend." His hand still held the vest. Rex's breathing was steady. Ferdinand closed his eyes. The next thing he remembered was light. Bright lights. Voices. Hands grabbing his arms. "We got a live one," someone yelled. Boots. Tools. A saw. Men shouting. "Stabilize that slab." He opened his eyes. Blurred faces. One leaned in. "We got you, Sergeant. Stay with us." He couldn't speak. Couldn't form words. Then he felt the vest being tugged from his fingers. "Get the K9!" a voice shouted. A man grabbed Rex's harness. "Come on, buddy, let's go." Rex finally moved. Tried to stand. Then let out a sound that stopped everyone cold. A sharp, high yelp of pain. He collapsed. The rescuer froze. "Whoa, he's not okay. He's hurt bad." Dust flew as they cleared the area around the dog. What they uncovered left the entire crew silent. Rex's back legs and lower body had been pinned under a steel beam the entire time. The dog had never made a sound. Never moved. Never cried out. Just sat, completely still, for over 6 hours, to keep his handler calm. He'd masked the pain. Endured it. Without a sound. If he had cried, if he had whimpered, if he had barked, Ferdinand would have tried to crawl to him. He would have moved. The slab above would have fallen. They both would have died. The truth hit Ferdinand like a knife. He hadn't been abandoned. Rex wasn't being stubborn. He was protecting him. Even when it hurt. Even when it meant sitting in agony. Even after being hit. Even after being yelled at. He stayed. Silently. So Ferdinand wouldn't panic. So he'd live. That was the last thing he remembered before the morphine kicked in and the world went black. They were wheeling him out when Rex let out the sound that froze the entire team. Not a bark. Not a growl. Just a sharp, broken yelp that ripped straight through the noise. One of the medics had tried to lift Rex by his harness, but the second his front paws left the ground, his body gave out. His back legs collapsed beneath him like they weren't even part of him anymore. The man holding the harness swore under his breath and lowered the dog back down gently. Another rescuer crouched beside Rex, running a hand down his spine, and that's when the truth finally came into the light. They started clearing the dust and rubble around him, brushing it away piece by piece until they saw what no one had seen before. Rex's right hind leg had been pinned the entire time, crushed under a steel support beam buried in the wreckage. The dog hadn't been free. He hadn't been sitting there by choice. He'd been trapped. And still, for over 6 hours, he hadn't made a sound. Not once. He hadn't flinched. Hadn't tried to move. He had just stayed. Silent. Calm. Watching. Ferdinand, strapped to the stretcher nearby, watched the scene through half-lidded eyes. He couldn't move. He couldn't even cry. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Just a slow, broken shake of the head as the weight of it all hit him. He had been begging Rex to run, screaming at him, throwing rocks, pleading, all while Rex had been enduring pain in silence, choosing not to cry out because he knew. Somehow, he knew that if he did, Ferdinand would try to reach him, try to help, and that movement would have triggered the slab hanging inches above his chest. The one they called the Widowmaker. Rex had stayed silent so Ferdinand wouldn't move. So he wouldn't die. He hadn't disobeyed. He had sacrificed. Ferdinand passed out before they loaded Rex onto his own stretcher. When he woke again, he was in a hospital bed, bandaged from the chest down. They told him he would walk again. Maybe not perfectly. Maybe not without pain. But he would walk. That didn't matter to him. He didn't ask about his own recovery. All he wanted to know was one thing. Where's Rex? The nurse gave him a look. Quiet. Thoughtful. Then finally said, "He's alive." They had to take the leg. But he's alive. 3 days later, they brought Rex into the room on a padded gurney, strapped gently to support his healing body. His right hind leg was gone. The side of his body was shaved, covered in bandages. But the moment Rex saw him, his ears perked. His head lifted. His eyes brightened. And that tail, what was left of his strength, thumped against the blanket, soft but steady. Ferdinand couldn't hold it in. He broke. Right there. Didn't say a word at first. Just covered his face and cried into his palms. Harder than he did under the rubble. Harder than he ever had in his life. The nurse quietly left the room. Nobody needed to be there for this. This was between the two of them. When Ferdinand finally looked up, Rex was staring at him. Waiting. Not accusing. Not nervous. Just there. Ferdinand reached out, hands still shaking, and pulled the dog close. Rex let his head rest against his chest. No hesitation. No fear. Just trust. Just love. "I threw rocks at you," Ferdinand whispered, voice raw. "I yelled. I told you to leave me. I tried to push you away." Rex didn't react. He just lay there, pressing into the warmth of the one man he had risked everything to protect. "And you didn't move," Ferdinand continued. "You just took it. You took it all." His fingers curled into the fur gently, afraid he might hurt him again, even now. "I didn't know, Rex. I didn't see it. I thought you were disobeying." The dog stayed still, listening, breathing. Later that day, the surgeon came in and explained everything. The leg couldn't be saved. The hip was shattered. But Rex had survived surgery without sedation longer than most animals could endure. The vet said it was the calmest, quietest dog he had ever treated. Not because he wasn't in pain, but because he was waiting for someone. "He didn't look scared," the surgeon said. "He just kept staring at the door, like he knew you'd come." Rehabilitation was brutal. Ferdinand's legs were slow to respond. The nerves fought him. The muscles wouldn't hold his weight. But Rex was with him through all of it. Always nearby. Always watching. When he screamed in frustration, Rex stayed. When he fell, Rex inched closer. When he broke down and told the therapist he couldn't do this anymore, Rex would lift his head and place it gently against his arm. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was healing. And in that silence, they rebuilt something stronger than anything war had broken. They left the military not long after. Not because they were useless, but because they were different now. Neither of them could go back to what they were. Not after what they'd seen. Not after what they'd survived. They settled in a small town. Quiet. Steady. Ferdinand worked part-time at a local hardware store. Rex got a custom-fitted wheelchair harness. The kids in the neighborhood would run up and pet him. He didn't flinch. Didn't bark. Just sat calmly, letting them love him. One morning, months later, Ferdinand drove them both back to the ruins of the old apartment complex. Most of it was gone now. Bulldozed. Rebuilt. Clean lines and new concrete. No trace of what happened. But Ferdinand remembered the exact spot. He wheeled Rex out of the truck slowly, helped him down. Together, they made their way to the place where it all happened. Where the floor caved. Where time stopped. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small bronze plaque. It had no rank, no name, just 6 words. He stayed even when it hurt. He knelt, dug a shallow hole, and placed the plaque in the dirt under a new tree. Then he sat beside Rex. No speeches, no ceremony, just a moment. "You saved me," he said finally, looking straight ahead. "Not by dragging me out. Not by barking for help. You saved me by doing nothing. You took the pain so I wouldn't feel mine. You stayed quiet so I wouldn't move. You stayed." Rex looked up at him, eyes soft and steady. Then, without a sound, he rested his head on Ferdinand's lap. Just like he had in that hole. Like nothing had changed. And Ferdinand, with tears rolling silently down his face, smiled. Because for the first time in months, he didn't feel broken. He felt alive. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end of this story. If you enjoyed this story, I promise you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more thrilling as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.